Okay, this is a Blender 2.7 Advanced Beginners tutorial, and in this particular lesson we're going to take a look at beveled edges. Now you notice in here in this game environment I have this table. Notice how sharp that edge is? They're really sharp. I mean, these are very unnatural type edges. Same with these chairs. And over here I have a little bit of an edge I placed on this truck like that, just like that. So we have a modifier, bevel modifier, to take care of things for us, but there's some tricks you really need to be aware of to make this so you have it really under control. But since we're in here just for a second, we might as well run this just for a second. Turn down the lights, put on a little lightning just because I like storms, right? And I'm working on this, but I'm working on a different version of this in Unity as well. They both have their advantages, Unity and Blender. I like them both. All right, well, so enough for that. So let's go look at Unity and you'll see the same thing. I have in here these beveled edges. But down here I don't have one. Sometimes I do this intentionally for design purposes. Sometimes I'm doing it to save the number of polygons that I want to render on a scene. I don't have it down here along these edges as well. So I might save, 20, 50 polygons, maybe more. You multiply that, maybe you have 50 cars in the scene. Then you start doing that with all kinds of objects and it can really add up. But let's look at it in the Blender environment. We'll start from scratch and I'll show you really what comes into play here. So if I was to add a cube to the scene, and I'll just use the Bevel Modifier for instance, so Shift A, cube. Alright, and I come over here to the Modifier tab, the little wrench, and I add a Bevel Modifier. It looks pretty good, right? So it does a nice job. And if you come over here, you can modify the width. There is, and this really works great for shiny objects, and it makes the objects look much more realistic. Alright, well, I'm not going to use that yet. Now let's take a look what happens if I first scale the object. Let's SX and scale it up here. Now let me use that same modifier. And if I look at it, what happens is now suddenly the amount of bevel that's being applied is dependent upon the scale that I have. So here the bevel in this direction is this little thin sliver, but you can see it in this direction. It's a much greater bevel. You can even shrink it down. You can see it's changing it back down to where they're equal on both sides like that, right? But maybe that's not what you want. And so if you hadn't, so what you have to do is, let's get rid of this again. And before I actually apply the bevel modifier, I'm going to press Control A. I'm going to apply the scale. Before I do that, actually, let's take a look over here at what's happened. In here, if you'll notice, here's the actual sizes. Here's Z and Y are 2, and X is 9.131, and this corresponds to a scale of 4.565 in the X direction. Well, when I apply that scale, it's going to turn this to a 1, essentially making this shape the natural size of that object. So that'll be its natural scale. So I'm going to press Control A, apply the scale. You see it turns it to 1. I mean, this is fundamentally important editing and modeling techniques. I use this stuff all the time. So now if I go back and get the bevel modifier, and notice immediately it's equal size on both sides. So that's really what I want. So that's one way. You just really have to be aware of that in case you're not aware of it. Alright, so let's take a look at something else. Let's take this and let me just put a new cube in the scene. Because sometimes I don't always want to use a bevel on all sides, like I said, if I want to try to save the number of polygons that I'm using. So if I go into here, and maybe I just want to use it on this one side, the same thing happens. If I press I can use the inset tool, and I can bring it down, and then I right click that face and bring it out, and then I can apply a bevel just where I want it, like this. Alright, I'll Control Z this back out. Alright, but the same issue happens if I scale this up first in SX, go into edit mode, get this, press I, and inset, and then you can see the same problem happens as before, too much on that side. So you know what has to be done, right? You Control Z that, leave edit mode, Control A, apply that scale to that object first. Then I'm going to go back into edit mode, use the inset tool with I, then I'm even on both sides. Alright, so these are really important little tricks that can help you in your modeling, and I hope it does, and I'll see you in the next lesson.